and creates immersive environments where students are excited to learn and grow. Today, we will be diving into how gamified strategies and resources can reshape the way we teach foreign languages. Through the lenses of experts' insight and practical experience, we'll explore how game based methodologies can transform classrooms and empower both learners and educators, and reflect on how we can incorporate these ideas into our own teaching practices. Let me now walk you through the agenda we have prepared for today. We will begin with a moment of respect as we listen to our national and institutional anthems. Next, we'll hear a greeting from the leader of SEDU in Sao, the Professor Jorge Enrique Borrero Avellaneda, who will open this event with a few words of welcome and vision. Then we will introduce our speakers, three individuals who bring diverse expertise and perspectives to the table about the gamification field. Our first speaker will be Magister Berna Santander, who will share her insights into pedagogical innovation through gamification, talking about engaging strategies for all classrooms. Following her, we'll hear from specialist Nicolas Games, who brings a technological lens to educational transformation, focusing on the design of gamified language experiences. Our third speaker, our bachelor student, Astrid Lopez, who is part of the GLT investigation group, will offer a refreshed perspective from her experiences as a pre-service teacher. After their presentations, we'll open the floor for questions, giving you a chance to engage directly with our panelists and share your own thoughts. We will also take a few moments to present ESEDU's educational offer, highlighting programs that support professional growth and innovation. And finally, we will bring the session to a close with a farewell and closing remarks. We hope today's discussion not only informs, but also inspires you to explore new possibilities in your teaching practices. Thank you all for being part of this important conversation, and thanks to our panelists for their participation tonight and their insights. To all our students, we hope this is an interesting conversation for all of you and can take advantage of all the knowledge we will share in this event. So let's begin with the anthems. We'll start with the national anthem of Colombia. Now we will continue with UNAT's University Anthem. All right, now we'll continue with a greeting from our leader from the SEDU in SAO, Dr. Jorge Enrique Borrero Avellaneda. If he's present right now, I'm giving him the stand to speak, otherwise I will present the video of his presentation.
Bien, acá estoy, acá estoy.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Ok, thanks, Diana. Entonces, una especial tarde para todas y para todos, para quienes nos acompañan también. Un saludo muy fraterno y caluroso de nuestra Escuela Ciencias de la Educación de la zona Amazonía Orinoquía para nuestra Universidad Nacional Abierta de Distancia, UNAD, y también igualmente que cada uno de nuestros ponentes, tanto Virna, Nicolás y Astrid, quienes se vinculan a este ejercicio académico que realizamos desde nuestra escuela. Y un agradecimiento especial a nuestro equipo que también se encuentra en zona, a usted que participa de estas experiencias tan importantes para nuestra vida académica con nuestros estudiantes, los docentes y también a las instituciones educativas que se integran a este ejercicio. Un agradecimiento muy especial de parte de nuestra escuela y nuestra universidad. Igualmente, como lo mencionaban, pues esta que sea una oportunidad importante para enriquecer este conocimiento precisamente a través de nuestro programa y también en ese ejercicio que realizamos también para nuestros estudiantes del programa de la licenciatura en lenguas extranjeras con énfasis en inglés e igualmente también que contamos con nuestros estudiantes de nuestro semillero. Un saludo muy fraterno, muy especial, un agradecimiento también por participar, por un elemento más para nuestro aprendizaje. Muchísimas gracias a todos, bienvenidas y bienvenidos.
Thanks to you, Dr. Jorge, for your greetings and your wishes for tonight. Let's continue then with our next point in the agenda, introducing our speakers or panelists. We'll start with the Magister Berna Santander, who will talk about gamification in teaching English, engaging strategies for all classrooms. Berna is Magister in teaching English as a foreign language with a broad experience in different institutions and educational contexts in both schools and universities, and will bring her expertise to the table about this topic. Then we will listen to Nicolás Gámez, a specialist in digital educational resource design and academic leadership, who will talk about from players to teachers designing gamified language experiences. And finally, we will have the participation from one of our students, Astrid Lopez, who's studying a bachelor degree program in foreign language education with emphasis on English. And we'll talk about her experience with gamification in EFL context, experiences in class. So we want to give a warm thank and welcome to our panelists for their participation. And we hope all of you, students, teachers, and everyone who's sharing this afternoon with us today can learn a lot from their experiences, insights, and knowledge. Let's start with Magister Birna.
Hi, how are you? I hope you are doing well, all of you here. So I'd like to start with my presentation. Just give me one moment. I would like to share here my screen. Okay, would you mind to confirm if you can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's a pleasure to be here with you, trying to share some of my experiences in the teaching of English or any language by using gamification. So today I'm going to have the chance to present this gamification in teaching English, engaging strategies for all classrooms, and the way that I apply this topic of gamification is through warm-ups and exit tickets. So I hope that you find it useful for your teaching activities. So this is the list of contents. I'm gonna present very quick gamification definition and its relevance in language learning. I'm gonna show you very quick some examples of effective games that I have with my classes. At the same time, I'm gonna show you some strategy for low-tech classrooms that we know that in Colombia context, there are some classrooms that do not have they do not have like internet connections or qualified technology for applying this type of games. Then finally, we have here conclusions. And of course, if you have questions, you are more than welcome to make them. So let's start with the definition of gamification. Gamification is the use, some authors claim that the gamification is the use of game design elements in non-game context to engage and motivate learners. It involves integrating features like points, badges, leaderboards, and challenges into educational activities in order to foster participation and sustain engagement. Games improve learning when tied to clear objectives. So remember that games are not the goal of our classes. Games is not the purpose of our class. It helps, okay, to our classes or to our lessons. And of course, games create immersive, meaningful context for language use. Some relevant key aspects of games in our classes could be summarized like this. They help us as teachers to motivate and engage our students. So games and stimulate interest and sustain attention, making language more interactive and enjoyable for our students. They provide immediate feedback. So in these cases, learners can have access to self-correction and deeper learning. It has a contextual learning, so games can provide meaningful context for language use, enhancing vocabulary and acquisition and practical application. Repetition and reinforcements, repetitive game structures allow to continuous practice to language key concepts in several forms. And of course, collaboration and communication, especially with multiplayer games, a part of fostering communication. It fosters interaction at the same time, which is very important when we are learning a language. So now, how do I use gamification in my classes? As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I use these type of games as warm-up activities or exit tickets. So warm-up activities, of course, at the beginning of the class in order to assess prior knowledge or maybe to recall some knowledge. And in some cases, by the end of the class, to reinforce the lesson content, to see, or as an informal assessment too. So that is the way I use games in my classes, okay, as a warm-up activity or as an exit ticket. I try to focus on a very specific grammar structure. Most of the time I use games in order to promote vocabulary skills for my students, or if I want to assess a reading. So I encourage my students to participate in the games. It helps me to progress. It helps me to see how is the progress of my students in the language learning. And at the same time, this type of games help me as a reward for my students. For example, I tell them, okay, for this game, the 5 first students will have extra credit for the final test, or will have extra credit for any type of assignment, so they feel encouraged to practice a little bit more. And once once we are done with the game, these type of activities allow me to discuss with my students and to have a type of reflection with them. So in some cases, I have the chance after the game is played. So I ask them, okay, so how you find easy, or what did you find easy in the game? What did you find difficult? What part of the vocabulary do you think that we need to reinforce? What was the strategy for you to win that game? Okay. So in my classes, taking into consideration that I teach in high schools which all of the students have access to laptops, and I have a big TV in my classroom, and all of my students have internet. So that is like the dream classroom in terms of technology. These two platforms that I invite you to see them, to find how could be applied in your own context. So these two platforms that I have here, GameKit and BlueKit, are very, very useful. Okay, so GameKit I use for vocabulary review and grammar. It has vocabulary reviews and grammar quizzes. Students earn and points and cash while comparing. And I have here BlueKit, which is mainly use for reading comprehension, matching exercises, and warm-ups activities too. So very, very quick, I would like to show you one of these platforms. Because of the time, I would like to show both of them, but just because of the time, I would like to show this platform. Let me see. Do you see something different now? So I have here this platform, GameKit Activity. So with this GameKit Activity, you as teacher, you have access to the different kits, okay, that can be used. You have reports of the students. So for example, I have here, I don't know, I teach Spanish in this school as a foreign language. So I have here, for example, the percent of the students, the accuracy of the students, so the incorrect answers or the correct answers. Apart from that, I have here, okay, you can have like assignments, you can create, of course, your own classes too. And for example, when we go back here, we have here all the reports, and when you go back here to the kits, so you can create your own GameKit activity, or just you can here in this, you can search, okay, for kids, okay, to just Google, for example, irregular verbs in English, regular verbs in English, or vocabulary related to house, and you will have access to several kits. And when we want to play, for example, let's try with this one very quick. So we have here play live. Depending if you have a paid version, I have a paid version because of the school that I work. You have several modes for you to play. And if not, you need to, as we say in Colombia, cacharrearle a la aplicación, and you will find something. For sure, you are gonna find something useful. So let's choose, for example, this one. This one is one of the most favorite games that my students like. So you can modify, for example, the minutes and checkpoints, the energy questions, and so on. Maybe you can read a little bit more about how to play. And after everything is done, you have access to this. And what I find useful here is that you can join, the teacher can join as a player, or the teacher can join as a spectator. So what I do with my students is that I play with them and I tell them, okay, so if you today you win to Miss Santander, because I'm not a game player, I'm not into video games and all this kind of stuff. So I try to get involved with them, and let's see, okay, so if you are above Miss Santander by the end in the leaderboard, so you will have extra credit or something like that. So the students are so excited, okay, let's win to the teacher, let's see what happens. Or they can compete each other. So this type of application or website, this is very, very nice. It has a lot of tools for you and is very useful for teachers. And as you can see, you can modify the game, how many minutes you want your students play, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. So it's up to you. So this is something that I wanted to show you about one of the applications that I use with my students. The other one is BlueKit Activity. I consider that with BlueKit Activity, a part of applying the vocabulary or the grammar that you are learning, you need to think about also about the strategy, about how to win to other students. So I find them very excited, these two applications, try to find some more information, try to see how you apply this in your classrooms. And for sure, if you have access to some laptops or just phones, because if you have your phone, you can connect, the students can connect through the phones. So these applications are really, really nice. So at the same time, when we talk about gamification, we need to think about how to apply games in low-tech classrooms, because we have here in this type of classroom some challenges. For example, we have limited internet, few or no laptop devices, and the solutions that we can have for this type of classroom is use no-tech or paper-based alternatives. So I have here a list of some of the activities that you can apply with your students if you don't have access to internet maybe, or laptops or phones, especially internet. So for example, we have the most popular one, vocabulary bingo, but you can add maybe something different to the vocabulary bingo. I have here hot seat, word chain, roll a sentence, sentence scramble, Pictionary, find someone who. So the idea is that if you want, you can Google all of these activities and you will find the explanation on internet, and you read the instructions, and then you as a teacher, you need to think about, depending on the context, depending on what you're teaching, depending on your lesson plan, think about, okay, how should I apply this in my classroom? Because that is our task, okay? So to think about how to link that kind of game to engage, motivate my students, and how to link that game to the purpose of my class. And with this type of low-tech games, so these activities follow the same gamification principles, which are competition or collaboration, immediate feedback, and clear goals. So as a summary or as a conclusion, I would say that gamification increases student motivation and engagement, especially for those students that consider, I don't feel good maybe at speaking in front of the class, but I'm good at doing this, maybe plan a strategy to win a game. So it's very special with those students that maybe are not good at learning language, but they are good at this type of games, thinking about competing each other. So I think that that is a way that we can, uh, uh, motivate that student and see and make him or her realize that learning a language through a different way could be fun too. Digital tools like Gimkit and Bluecat can enhance instruction, but only when used with a purpose. So it's important to consider here that games should support, not replace instructional goals, because games are a means to an end and not the end in itself. So this is very important. Low-tech alternatives ensure equity and inclusion to our classes, of course, but here the role of the teacher is very important because, as I told you, you need to think about what type of game works depending on the context you are teaching. And remember, games are the how, not the why. Do not spend, that is my recommendation, please do not spend the whole class, the 50 minutes, the 60 minutes that you have for your class playing a game, because the games are not the why of your classes, are how, okay? And of course, games provide real-time feedback, promote meaningful repetition. It can be followed by reflection, and of course should be connected with the standards and the learning targets. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate, ask them. And for me, it was a pleasure here to be with you. And remember that learning English is not just about acquiring a new language, but also about opening doors to a broader world filled with opportunities and adventures. Thank you so much for your attention.
All right, thank you so much to Professor Berna. Do you have any questions, dear students, teachers who are participating? Questions directed to our first panelist? You can either ask in Spanish or in English. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to ask Professor Birna a question that is shared by the chat for one of our teachers. It says, in what way the use of gamified resources in your class has fostered motivation or engagement in high school students?
As I mentioned in my presentation, it helps those students. I have had some students that do not like, to participate in front of the class, and to participate through a screen for them becomes a little bit easier. Okay, so some students think, oh, English is so difficult to learn, I don't find it useful. But for example, when you bring this type of methodology to your classroom, like games, in order to engage your students, so those type of students that maybe are not into learning English, but they are good at, games, because nowadays we know that we have a lot of teenagers who are into video games and this kind of stuff. So you are not maybe good at English, maybe you are not interested at learning English at all, but you are good at video games. So why don't you participate and you show me maybe other different skills, but at the same time, you need to demonstrate that you are participating by answering some questions in English related to vocabulary or reading comprehension and so on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, we have another question. It says, what are the biggest challenges you face when implementing gamified methods, and how did you overcome them?
So I think that during pandemic, during COVID, I mean, before COVID, I used to work in a rural area in Colombia with no internet, with no laptops. The students didn't have access to internet. The students didn't have access to either phones. So that was one of the biggest challenges that I had. And what I started to do with my students or by myself is, okay, so I have access to my laptop, I have access to the copier of my institution. So let's try to find some activities in which learners can get involved through games like the ones that I mentioned here. For example, these activities that I have here. So for example, I had here this one Pictionary. I didn't print anything. It was just me, the board, and the marker. I gave them some words. Okay, so these are the words, and start to start to act the word, and the other ones are going to start to guess the word. Or for example, we had bingos activities, or we had word change, in which one student started with one word. Let's say I asked them, like, okay, you are going to write a sentence by applying present tense and daily routine verbs. So you are going to start the first student in a row. Okay, so let's see, the first student, write a sentence, what do you do in the morning? Okay, and then the other student, write a sentence, pass the paper to the student and write a sentence, what do you do after that, and so on. So everything depends on the context. Everything depends on how you creative are as a teacher. Try to read about this type of activities on internet, because there are a lot of activities, and modify them and then implement them in your classroom depending on the goals and context you are.
Okay, perfect. I totally agree with you. Especially these recommendations are important for Colombian institutions where we know sometimes technological resources are limited. The access to connectivity, to internet, maybe having a screen or a computer in our classrooms might be a challenge. But these are other options that we can have and implement to try to continue using gamification just with low tech resources. Thank you
Yes,
so much
totally agree.
for your insights.
Mhm.
Our final question for you, Professor Berna, is what advice would you give to our students and future teachers who are willing to implement these strategies in their classrooms and in their teaching practices?
The first advice I would like to give them is, first of all, do not spend 60 minutes of your class playing, because games are not the objective of our classes. Games are just one tool that we have as a teachers. We have just like those 10 minutes at the beginning of the class to make our students engage with the content. Okay, so take advantage of those 10 first minutes of the class by applying a game or maybe other strategy, and then you can start with your class. So but do not think about that games are the goal of our classes. Is the those 10 minutes that we have in order to, okay, so they are paying attention, so I need them to feel engaged and I need them to feel motivated in my lesson, so I'm going to take advantage of those 10 first minutes, and then I can start with the rest of the lesson, or just to, to assess prior knowledge and what I mentioned during my presentation. And at the same time, when you think about gamification, do not think that gamification is only technology. It's not only technology. Gamification also is about little things that you can do in your classrooms without a laptop or without a computer, but you need to think about, everything depends on the context, everything depends on the type of students that you have, everything depends on the level of your students. So try to read, try to get informed about what type of games, try to apply these games and see, okay, this work, this doesn't work with this type of students, so I'm going to change the strategy. And if a strategy works, so try to make it creative if you reapply it again in your classroom.
Okay, thank you so much for all your answers and your participation, Professor Berna. It's been really interesting for all of us, and I'm sure all our students have been benefiting from all your experiences and advice. We will continue now with our next panelist, the specialist Nicolas Games, who will share his presentation about designing gamified language experiences. Go ahead.
Okay, everyone. I hope you're having a great afternoon today. And the idea today is to share my experience with you on gamified experiences and how to design gamified experiences by means of technology and by means of the series of a wide array of technological advances and tools. This starts with the experience of being a player and being a teacher. Both things can be together. First of all, I'm going to show you what's gamification and the difference between gamification and other similar concepts. Then I'm going to talk to you about instructional design and why is it important to create real life experiences and true effective resources. Then I'm going to show you how ADI, the model of instructional design, is going to be used and useful at the same time for creating these resources. And finally, my own experience, sharing with you a case that I applied with two universities. Before we start with sharing my experience, we have to know what is gamification. Gamification is similar to another term that is ludification and another term that is game-based learning. Before that, we have to know that gamification involves motivating students, of course, that's the goal in the end, but the idea is to offer real-life experiences by means of elements of games. That's what Burks mentions. And with that, we have to make the difference between the three concepts. When we talk about gamification, we want to share the information of elements of games. We think about the elements of games, not games themselves. Is how do you get the elements of games in the classrooms, in our context, be it in a university or being in a school. It depends, of course, on the context. but I am taking the elements, not the game, the elements of games, like points, badges, groupings of people, some prizes, and competition in the end. We also talk about ludification. It's different because when ludification, you want to get involved with the spirit of play, because when you play, you are absolutely happy, or you are anxious, or you are sad and you want to win. And that's the spirit of play that you want to get into students. And that motivates students to participate, of course. And they sometimes forget during the competitions that they are learning and practicing English as a foreign language. They are so interested about the game, like the competition, that we forget that we are using English, practicing vocabulary, and doing other activities. And then we have game-based learning. Game-based learning is when you use real games, when you use games in the context of the class. Gamification are elements of the games. Ludification is the spirit of game. I want to generate an emotional response, but game-based learning is using real games. So when we have Kahoot, Kahoot is a game that is in game-based learning, not gamification in itself. Yes? With this difference in mind, now we can talk about the next part, and that is that the benefits of the implementation of the three are great. Sometimes when we use gamification, we try to separate it from ludification and game-based learning. And we can combine these approaches, these processes, so we can get all of the benefits or most of the benefits from them. With gamification, we can increase the participation of the students. That's one of the best things that we can get from gamification. And we also want to encourage practice, real life practice, how students get involved together. With ludification, we want to encourage participation, but with the emotional response. When you are in a game, when you are in a competition, you want to feel great, you want to win. And that's what we can take advantage of in ludification. Yes. And of course, when we use ludification, we want to try to use creativity. And teachers, English teachers, people, we are the most creative teachers as we can get. And finally, with game-based learning, we can get benefits, especially with how it's already available sometimes, and how we can use those games without having more activities to be done. When we have game-based learning, we can get the best of it because it promotes solving problems. In what language? Sometimes the interface, when you play Kahoot or generally or quizzes, the game is in English. So they are interacting without knowing in a game. There is a challenge for each one. And the first one is that gamification material requires good instructional design and time. That's a big challenge. With ludification, there is a problem that some people get, and that is they are playing games, they are not learning. So we are using all the time and they are not learning anything. They're just playing and the teacher doesn't do anything. Mm-mm. It's a misconception that we have to avoid. And with games, we need the resources, the materials, the technology, and sometimes we don't have it at schools or universities. Okay. Now, with that background, we have to get into instructional design. Instructional design are methodological considerations that we can get to create material. Indeed, actually, when we want to refer to instructional design, Robert Gagne is actually telling us is not creating material. That is material design for any bachelor's degree. But when we are using instructional design, we think about the students, we think about the needs, we think about the context, and we think about the resources and how to integrate all those things into our educational context. If you think about instructional design is like the tool that you have. It's like when you are going to cook a sancocho, for example, you need water, you need potatoes, you need chicken, tomato, and you need all of those ingredients, and you have a process. You don't just put and that's it. You have a process, and that's instructional design. With instructional design, you want to think about the characteristics of your students. What level of are they? A2, A1, B2, B1? What is the cultural background? Is it the same to teach in Villavicencio as to teach in Bogota or to teach in La Costa? It's not the same. Do we have the similar background? Not really. So we have to pay attention to those elements. What are their preferences? And the big word is preferences in here. We have to think about the objectives. What do we want to work on? We want to work on pronunciation. We want to work on grammar. What do you want to work on? And then what is the content? With all the curricular design, we have vocabulary, pronunciation, okay. And with what specific skill? Listening, maybe? We want to talk about something and we use listening. Okay, I want to practice writing. What is the idea in that? Then we have to choose which approach are we going to take. Total physical response, one of my favorite, personal favorite. The students run in the class, the students jump, the students crouch, they get together, they embrace. It's one of my favorites. But there are other storytelling, role play. Choose the one that suits the context. Then you have to choose the method of evaluation, formative or summative. In what stage? And then we have to take into account the context, specific information, the number of students, do we have computers, do we have phones, we have 1 hour, or 3 hours, 2 hours, 50 minutes. That's something that we have to take into account. And with that, what model do I follow? There are some of those that you can see on the screen. My personal favorite, as same as most of the people, is ADDIE. ADDIE is one model of a instructional design that is very practical and is very useful for any type, be it digital resource or physical resource. The process is very simple, but in general view, when you apply ADDIE to EFL context, it means English as a foreign language, it helps you to get together all the information of grammar, vocabulary, communicative activities into a very organized, coherent set of experiences that are used in our context. That is ADDIE, according to Melendo. The process for this starts with very simple parts, but to give you a perspective and to convince you of this, I'm giving you some numbers. 35%, there is a 35% of increase in the satisfaction of the students when they are trying to learn English using material with ADDIE. There is a 60% of improvement in the retention of content, information, vocabulary when you are learning another language in courses with ADDIE design. And to make it more popular, 70% of all instructional designers, they use ADDIE to create curriculum designs. But there is a pick in this. You need around 49 to 125 hours to create, apply, implement, and evaluate this design. For ADDIE, we have 5 steps: analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. In the analysis, we want to know what are the students going to do. What do they like? Do they like series? Do they like movies? Do they like to play or not? Then with all the information that we get from our students, we design the material. What are the objectives, the vocabulary that we're going to use, what material, images, videos, GIFs are you going to use? And after that, you apply, you develop that. In what tool? It depends on you. You can do gamification with PowerPoint, generally Canva, or other sophisticated platforms. And with that, we prepare it. Now let's apply it, implementation with the students. When you implement, you are watching the reaction of the students. Did they like the resource? Did they like the material? Are they competing? Do they have the spirit of competition and participation? All those things are going to be able to give us some feedback, some information for the evaluation process. And the evaluation process is the evaluation both of the students and the evaluation of the material that we have. But enough about what is adding. Let me show you a process of my example. I chose one specific case. Clearly. I was in a class, I had 27 students. The language level of them was A2 in English, of course. I looked at it, they had video beam sometimes. They had TV, but not every day. They had Moodle, the platform. I love Moodle. And they had the phones with Wi-Fi. Oh, okay, I have the material. Then I started to ask my students, what do you like? Do you like movies? Do you like series? What do you like to see? And they told me Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Twilight. And I said, okay, wait, Harry Potter? I love Harry Potter. Game of Thrones, I like Game of Thrones. And Twilight, Crepúsculo, I'm sorry, I don't like it. So, no, Twilight is out of questions. But they said, no, teacher, we love Game of Thrones. Okay, let's go with Game of Thrones. So I started to use gamification and ludification as a mix so I can get the ideas of both the narrative of ludification, the story of Game of Thrones, the wars, the battles, and the points, the badges, the houses, the groups, the competition of gamification. So I took all of that and I said, Game of Thrones. Okay, I have the points, I have the houses, the groups of the students, I have the territories, I have the powers or abilities, I have the competition that I want to create, and I also have some punishments and rewards. Oh, okay. So based on this, I said, let's put hands into action. And what I did was simply I created this. What you see in here is actually my creation. And this is a map that I created through Genially, and it's in itself the gamified experience. Every day when they came to the classroom, we had this resource, this material for the English session. In here, I created the point-based board. This is a tool from another platform, and it is updated when I update it. We have the rules, and with the rules, I present the abilities and the dynamics of the competition. I also created the activities. Each group has a different ability. They can eliminate, take points. They can battle each other. It's a competition at the end. And some information about the narrative of Game of Thrones so they can get involved. We are playing with a story. Yes. And in the end, they don't pay attention to something. All of this is in English. If they want to read this, you have to read it in English. You have no time to translate it to Spanish because you are in a competition and you want to win. You don't know, but you are reading information in English. You don't translate. You have to understand. You have to do the activity. You have to do something. And that's in the end what we want to do. Students get involved. They compete. They have an emotional response. And that's what I created. With this, I generated groups of students, and each group had an ability, and they were together in the classes. They were together, and they worked as a group, not as a person. So there is also collaborative work in there. Yes. Now, as to end this little talk, I want to give you some reflections on my experience. Number one, try to be as practical as possible. When you are going to design material, try to think about the time that you're going to use, the preparation time, the design time, and the implementation time. Also, nowadays, you can use AI or artificial intelligence, and it helps a lot. It's not a magical solution, but it helps a lot. Number two, try to reuse and adapt materials. We have to think about the educational contexts. In some cases, we have to prepare classes, teach classes, grade and evaluate students in the class, evaluate process or products of students after class. We have to talk about reports, and we have to talk about the instances with parents. With all that time, when are you going to create design material? You can reuse, adapt. This material I created, I can apply it with another group. I can use it in another group if I adapt it. I can do it in French. I can transform it to Spanish class. There is no problem because I can adapt, and that is the point. And finally, try to know your students. That is absolutely key for every type of instructional design method and for gamification. You have to know your students. You cannot apply an activity if you don't know if your students like it. Do you know what your students like? Do you play the games that your students like? Maybe you experience something that your students like, or just I teach my class. I know it's not the case. Most of the teachers we know and we want to get to know students. So get a conversation with students, what they need, what they fear, what they don't like. And in the end, that's is going to be all the background that you need. Finally, before I finish, I suggest you to play and enjoy. When you do gamification and gamification or game-based learning, with all of this, you're trying to share a moment with your students. It's not only about teaching grammar, it's not about teaching simple past. When you want to use this, it's because you want to get involved with students. It depends on the context, but you want to get involved. You want to play and be another student with them. There are some references if you would like to check. I can get the information for all of you. And without further ado, if you have questions, let me know. If not, thank you very much for this time.
All right, thank you so much to Professor Nicholas for his presentation. It's been really interesting, this theoretical background and this model and specific information about how to design effective gamified experiences in the language teaching process. Now we have some questions for you, Professor Nicholas, that we hope you can answer. The first one is, what platforms for online gamified resources do you recommend to teachers who are starting to implement this strategy in their classes?
It depends entirely on what you have available and what you know or what you can do with some platforms. You can start with PowerPoint. PowerPoint, some people think is very basic, but PowerPoint is a powerful tool, and you can make escape rooms in PowerPoint. There are very good PowerPoint presentations using mystery games and also escape games. You can also use Genially. In my case, I love Genially. I don't pay for it. In the past, I used to do it, but right now I don't see the benefits of it being free. So I don't pay it. I use the free version of Genially. Canva is also good. Any type of presentation based tool is very good for gamified experience. In the end, is not what the platform is not how sophisticated the platform is. In the end, is how you design it. What is the instructional design that you have behind? With PowerPoint, you can do even better things than with Genially on Canva. It depends on how you plan and design the material.
Okay, thank you so much. This is really interesting for all teachers who maybe do not have the access to expensive platforms or resources that require to pay for a monthly fee or something like that. In fact, Kate in the chat asked if the game you created was free or did you have to pay for it?
And that's exactly why I mentioned. It's free. All the platform that I used was Genially. All the images they didn't have copyright. They were used with Creative Commons, and all the information was free. It was available in an internet, and it was pretty easy to to create. The design was pretty difficult to organize, and the time I used, it was extremely awful, but I loved the result.
Yeah, of course. It seems like it requires a lot of effort and dedication, like to design every single part of a resource like this one. But it's really interesting, and I guess it's really amazing to see it in practice with our students and see how they benefit and they have a lot of fun while actually learning. It's really interesting your experience. We have another question for you, Professor Nicolas. It says, How do you see the use of AI or immersive technologies influencing the future of gamified language education?
Can you repeat again? Because it just cracked in the internet.
Okay, of course. How do you see AI or immersive technologies influencing the future of
Ooh.
gamified language education? I mean, with the rise of all of these technologies.
Every day there is an increase of creation of tools. There are a lot of chats, like personalized chats, in which you can interact with a virtual person, and that person is going to answer apparently like a normal person. It's like when you chat with ChatGPT, but there is like a normal WhatsApp web chat, and it's interesting. Is it the problem for us as teachers? I don't really think so, because in the end, they are just a lot of tools. At the moment, I am pretty sure that when I tell you, give me 10 tools to create images, and you're like, okay, I think one, two, three, and maybe there are more that I don't know. You can see it and you can check, and there are over 100, 200 applications or tools to create images. Do we know them? How about applications to create videos? Maybe I know this, I know some information about YouTube, maybe there is another one that is on a social network. I don't know more. You can find 500. In a cell phone, you can find many more in the App Store. Do we know them? No. The problem in the end with AI in our context as educators is not if there are tools or platforms. In the end, is do we know how to use them? Are we open to the experience of platforms of or AI, the use of AI in our classrooms? Or are we big enemies of technology? Because if we are, then we have a whole world, a whole panorama that we are not interacting with. So in the end, the AI is there. It was here last week, last 10 years ago, but in 10, 20 years, we will have more. What are you going to do? And what are we going to do as teachers? That is the problem. And that is the question in the end.
Yeah, it's really interesting the reflection that you bring. And of course, especially for us as a distance and virtual university, all of these resources result in an amazing opportunity for our students to actually practice and improve their language level. But as you say, it's a matter of getting to know them and finally finding the proper way to use it and to implement it in our classes, and for students to take advantage of all of these resources that are basically just one click of distance away, right? So now we have one final question. For Catherine says, is there a platform that allows you to record voices as a way to practice pronunciation with the students?
Yes, actually, there are many, many. And there is something that sometimes happens when I try to talk with teachers about platforms, because I have been part of the teams. I have led two university teams in creating virtual rooms, aulas virtuales, of 6, 7, 20 levels. And the problem in the end is not the platform. You can do it with even WhatsApp web or even WhatsApp. When you want to use platforms, my personal experience as an instructional designer is don't try to get 100 tools to use. It's like when you have a book, okay, in your school or university, you have a book, and that is the book that you are going to use for classes. Do we get more benefits from using 20 books in only 1 year? Do we get from this day this book, from the other day this book, and the other book? Not really. We have to be practical about how many platforms do we have. Are there platforms? Yes. There is one platform in which you can share. The name is skipping my head. But there is one platform in which you can record the video and the students can see the videos. It's like a forum with videos. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. There is another one in which you can interact. There is an application called Tandem in which you can also chat and sometimes record. It depends on on the version that you have, and the other person can give you feedback in English or in the other language that you are learning. You can also use very old tech platforms that are online. But in the end, as I told you, it's not the amount of platforms that you have, but how do you use them and which are more practical for you, of course. If you want to get to know more platforms, or if you want to get just like an array of platforms, I can give you a data base, like table, a chart with all the platforms that I have used. And if you would like to try it, I would love to give it to you. I would love to give it to all of you.
Okay, that will be really amazing for our students to share with them. So thank you so much to Professor Nicolas for sharing your experiences and and all your knowledge tonight about this really interesting and innovative process and field that is right now part of the educational language teaching process. And now let's start with our final speaker. But before we get with Astrid's presentation, I'm going to remind all participants, students, teachers, and everyone who's connected right now to please complete the attendance form and the evaluation form that have been shared through the chat in this encounter. There are two links that have been shared. We hope all of you can answer them so we can record your participation and have your insights about this event. Okay, so let's continue with our final speaker, our student Astrid Gomez, and who will share her experience about gamification in her own practices. Go ahead, Astrid.
Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Astrid Lopez. I'm a student of bachelor degree in foreign language, and I have worked as a teacher for some years. So I'm going to show you this presentation, but before starting, I like to ask if have you ever procrastinated? Please turn a thumbs up if your answer is affirmative. Um, I know that this meeting is about gamification, but please answer the previous question. For example, in my case, I have procrastinated a lot of times. And when we procrastinate, we put off important activities because we need two important neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. So our brains love fun, and these neurotransmitters are associated with motivation and happiness. So now, why I asked you about procrastination? Well, because gamification involves activities in order to motivate our learners and help us to create a cheerful atmosphere. Now, let's start with my presentation, and I need that you help me to answer some questions. I'm going to show you 5 questions. We have listened about gamification, and if you know the answer, please raise your hand or activate your microphone. I'm going to start my presentation. So the first question is, what is gamification? Sorry. What is gamification in context of language learning? First option, using game elements to make learning more engaging. Second option, turning a video game into a language lesson. Or the last option is teaching students how to design games. For you, what is the correct option? You can activate your microphone or raise your hand. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Astrid. Maybe
Yes.
If people
Yes,
do
I
not
can
want
hear
to
you.
open their mic, they can share their answers in the chat, maybe. That's another
Yes,
option.
yes, I check here using game elements to make learning more engaging. Very good. So we're going to select that one. That's correct. Now, this is the second question. Which of the following is not a typical gaming element using gamification? Points and rewards, leisure and tests, or levels and challenges? So who knows the answer?
It's- eh, Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, which of the following is not a typical game element used in gamification? Okay, we have here three answers. Let me check. Okay, very good. Leisure and tests. Uh, Next question, true or false? Gamification can help students feel more comfortable speaking a foreign language by reducing fear of mistakes. True or false? True. Very good. Thank you so much for your
Mm.
answers.
No, no, no.
Uh, okay, next question. What does gamification promote in the classroom? We are going to select the best one. So memorization without interaction, individual work only, or meaningful communication.
I believe that memorization is very nice because you know that when you are playing, you record the knowledge in your subconsciousness.
Okay, but in this case, we mentioned without interaction. So we have here meaningful communication. Yes, that's the last option. Thank you so much. Because when we play in our classrooms, the idea is that we spend time with our classmates and we learn together. Which is one reason gamification supports language learning. So it replaces communication with competitions, it motivates learners to participate, or it removes vocabulary from practice. What do you think is the best option?
Hmm. Um, dear, sorry, but the gamification is very good, but I don't believe that is the best option because when you face the true English is very speed and have the pronunciation very speed. I believe that the best option is listen music and watching movies and speak with people native of the countries when the language English is the native tongue.
Okay, yes, that's right. We can have an immersion with the language. We can talk with native speakers, that's right. But we're going to select this option that you wrote in the chat box. We have it motivates learners to participate. Very good. Now, I'm going to show you something related with the definition of gamification. So I'm going to read this slide. It's a new way to teach that makes learning fun and motivating by using parts of games. Instead of playing a full game, students do activities that have game-like elements. Gamification has been defined in various ways, but in context of teaching, the most relevant definition is using game mechanics, game aesthetics, and game-based thinking to capture people's attention, motivate them to actively participate, stimulate learning, and find solutions to problems. Okay, now let's go ahead. I'm going to show you some digital tools that I usually use to um, to create material. So we are going to start with Padlet. Padlet is used to post comments or videos as a result of a class. Remember that gamification is not the main goal of our classes. It's just a tool to motivate our students, and it's just to help us to create our classes or to start our classes, because we can use it as use games as icebreaker activities or warm-ups. I'm not sure if I open this link. Can you appreciate this new tab?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I'm going to show you this activity that I work with my students. We completed some activities on Padlet. It was a challenge. They had to complete some activities during 30 days. We have some activities, speaking activities or debate activities, or just create a picture or record a video. This is the first tool that I usually use, Canva, to create attractive presentations. For example, in this case, I use it to create a presentation to celebrate Valentine's Day. We did this activity. Remember that we can use digital tools and also we can use physical games. I'm going to talk about it on the next slide. Quizzes is another tool that we can use. It's an online learning tool to create quizzes and interactive lessons. In this case, we can evaluate the use of verb be. Remember that it's important that we adapt our material for different levels and different language levels and ages. Genially, so we can use Genially to create engaging presentations, infographics, or different games like this one. Kahoot. Kahoot allows us to create fun quizzes and interactive surveys. We have this one. And Interactive, it's another tool that we can use to create a interactive content. In this case, we have a match activity. We have to match these these pictures with these words to practice vocabulary, or it can help us to introduce the new vocabulary of our class. And Wordwall is another tool that we use to create quizzes or different material like different games. Now, let's go ahead with this part. So, tips for teachers or for students, for future teachers. If you are thinking of using more gamification to identify different aspects, such as age and language level, with the purpose to adapt our games and materials. So remember, start simple. One game element is enough. You don't need to turn the whole class into game, because remember, this is just a tool. And be clear about the communicative goal. Always ask, how will this help them speak or understand better? Mix physical and digital games. Variety keeps learners engaged. For example, we can use the previous tools that I have shown you. Or we can use, for example, I like some games like Hot Potato. Hot Potato, it's a game when students pass an object around a circle while someone sing hot, hot, hot potato. And when he or she stops, the person holding the object has to answer a question or complete an activity. And there is another activity that I like as a physical game that is Chinese whisper, or in Spanish, teléfono roto. We form a line and someone whispers something into the ear of the person next to him or her, and the next player in the line has to say the message out loud for everyone to hear. And reflect afterwards, ask students why they like and what they learned. This is important. This is our feedback. We need to understand if they understood the topic and if our games were useful or no during our class. Okay, so that's it for my presentation. Thanks for your participation. And if you have any question, please let me know.
Okay, thank you so much, Street, for your presentation and sharing all your experiences and strategies.
Thank you.
We have a question here for you. It says, as a student and future teacher, what kind of gamified experience has been the most meaningful or memorable to you?
Okay, sorry, could you repeat the first part again, please?
Yes, as a student and future teacher, what kind of gamified experience has been the most meaningful or memorable to you?
Okay, I have had different experience as a teacher. In my case, I have worked as a teacher. First, I started as a mathematics teacher, and I worked in a school, a bilingual school, where I had to teach mathematics and science in English, and it was really interesting because I learned a lot of the vocabulary related with math and how to teach something to children, because it's really important to identify that part. When you teach to children, you have to adapt your material in your classes to be able to share your ideas and this is important because you don't have to play games all whole classes, but you have to show or you have to understand that they just want to play. So for example, one class that I remember is that I had to thought to teach, sorry, I had to teach the number line, and it's really hard to understand the the definition and then to explain it. So the game that I planned in that case was I just draw a line on the floor, and we play a game simulated that we were frogs, and we studied addition and subtraction, and we moved one step forward. When we add something, we understood that the number line starts from 0, and we can add different numbers and they move through the line, just jump step by step, or we practice addition. In this case, for example, 2 plus 2, we were in the position number 2. So if we add 2, what number are we going to get? So we move two steps forward, and we stayed on number 4. So they understood a little about that, but I think that it's the most interesting part of the language, because as the teachers mentioned before, we don't use English just as a second language. We sometimes use English as a tool to teach other languages. No, to teach other topics or other subjects because here in Colombia we need to explain some other subjects related with English, but not necessarily English. So we have to adapt our classes or our material in our vocabulary to teach that in an easy way.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really interesting experience. It's really amazing to hear about your teaching practices in different fields, not just directly teaching the language, but also, as you say, using it in other contexts, in other educational contexts. Now, our final question, Astrid, is how do you balance fun and pedagogy to ensure that gamified tools still meet the learning objectives? And as you say in your presentation, the class doesn't become just to play games. How do you keep that balance?
Okay, thank you, teacher. This is really important, but I know that there are some topics or some grammar structure that are really difficult when we teach them. For example, when we teach something like, for example, report speech, it's really hard to explain it through gamification. So you can use some keywords or some attractive words for learners. For example, you can say, okay, you can relate the report speech with gossip. What is gossip? In Spanish, it's chisme. So you use report speech to say something that someone else said, and you have to explain the structure. And then you can use, for example, it's not a game, but you can use, for example, a word wall. It's a tool where you can adapt material like a simple fill in the gaps activity, and you can use it with colors or with different um, I don't know, different forms, or you can use, for example, you can use cards to show questions, or you can use a wheel for to ask some questions. For example, when you talk about a future forms, what are your plans, what do you like to do? So it depends of the topic, it depends of the class, but it's important that you don't focus your attention just on gamification. You have to keep a balance, that's right, because you have to explain something, a structure, and then you can use some games or some activities, interactive activities that help the students to improve their language. And I think that it's important to be clear at the beginning of the class to show the aims of the class, because if the structure is not doesn't allow us to use games, it's important that you mention it at the beginning of the class.
Okay, perfect, Astrid. Once again, thank you so much for your answers and your participation tonight in sharing your experiences and all your knowledge from your pedagogical practices. It's been really interesting to know all of you, Birna, Nicolas, and Astrid, your insights about this topic, your experiences, your advice for our students and teachers. And it's a pleasure for us to have you here and share your thoughts and knowledge with us. Now, before we continue with the last part of our agenda for today, we want to invite all participants to complete the attendance form that has been shared several times in the chat of this meeting, and also the evaluation form so you can share your thoughts and opinions about our encounter. I'm going to allow myself to share the screen one more time just to finish our presentation. And our last point in the agenda is to share with you the SEDU's educational offer we have for all of you, our students, our guests. We provide both undergraduate and postgraduate programs, as you can see in the screen right now. You can access our website and check or take a look at all the educational offer we have right now and the tuition schedule we have open for students during the whole year. So we hope you can take a look at our offer and take advantage of all the educational programs that the UNAD University through the SEDU faculty offers. Okay, so I'm going to now ask the other professors, Professor Jimena, Professor Christian, if you're right there, to on your camera and give a warm thank to all our participants. Thank you, Jimena. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Well, as Adriana said, I just want to thank you. We really appreciate to have you in this encounter. And it was an honor to know more about those resources and those experience and the way that we can motivate or enhance our students. So we hope to see you to another encounter and to know more about this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimena. Christian, do you have any words for our students?
Okay, thank you so much for the participants who share important information, how to create materials for teaching and learning purposes. And thank you so much. It was a great moment to share information with our students. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot to everybody for participating. One more time to our panelists, Professor Berna, Professor Nicolas, Professor Astrid. Thank you so much for sharing all these experiences. We hope we can count with your participation in further encounters or events. And thanks to all our students and teachers who have been connected this afternoon with us, learning from all these interesting experiences about gamification. And we hope this has been an important moment for all of you to reflect on your own pedagogical practices and learn about other resources or tools that we can implement in our classes and our classrooms to help our students keep motivated, continue their learning process, and improve their language skills. Or maybe for students, even to practice and improve your own language level. So it's been a pleasure for us to be with you today. Finally, don't forget to complete the attendance form, please, that has been shared several times, and the evaluation form. And that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Good
Thank
night
you
to
very
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.